Welcome everyone to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. This is Dan coming to you as always at the studio at DTM Enterprises, which is actually my little wood shop in my backyard. So to spin right out of there, go to dtmww.net. I do a little handyman work around the Louisville metropolitan area. Also, you can contact me from that. Go to Amazon and get 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cone. It is this add to improve the quality of your life in recovery 12 steps that we talk about in here. I just shared here about the methodology being used in that, and it really is an optimized method of working the steps. Darren Frank's music is wrapped around this podcast. Will be again today, and go to spiritualunderground.org for show notes, pictures of the guests, and also a contact me page there also. So I would love to hear feedback. I get some emails from some of you folks out there. I really do appreciate it. The fact of the matter is that I'm doing this in order that people maybe need this help can get it also, and I'm willing to do that. And if you want to call me or contact me through that contact me page, I'd be more than happy to help in whatever manner I can, and also welcome any feedback on what you like about this podcast, what you don't like, and take another step. I can do this thing remotely too, so if you want to be a guest on the podcast, contact me. I think I have like an infinite number of guest potentials. I don't think I'm ever going to be running out of potential guests, but I'd like to hear your story too, so come carry the message and share it. So this is the second half of a double header today. You guys won't hear it that way, but this is, and so some of this may sound a little bit redundant from a previous podcast, but Mark and Marshall are here today. Mark's time up at the microphone now. Marshall just told his story. Mark sponsors Marshall, and Marshall just hit 1 year. And so it's somewhat of a little celebratory thing in my mind of coming here and doing this double header under that new, fresh 1 year energy, because I know as a sponsor that's super freaking cool too, man. There's nothing much juicier than giving away 1 year tokens. And hearing these stories and doing this. So I'll just repeat that same thing that I'm in, and now feel stupid for even saying that. But so here's how these people come into my life. They're down from about an hour away from here, and they're going to 12-step meetings, and they meet another gentleman who happens to talk about some podcasting, and they like listening to audio too. So that brought them up to the podcast, and then also got touched into the meeting that the podcast is named after, which is a Spiritual Underground meeting here in Louisville. They come up and visited it. I know when new people come in, but I didn't put two and two together when I received the email from Mark. I had a little trouble visualizing who I was hearing from on the email compared to who I see in the meetings. And I kind of giggle at that too, because like the people I see, if I see you outside of a 12-step meeting, sometimes it's a little bit different atmosphere. It's like seeing you with a different backdrop, and I'm going, is that same person? Now, obviously the people I know well, that's not a problem. But if I've not known you really well, I'm not sure if I know you from that, or if it's just if it's a mind game. I'll tell you another place where it comes in big time is people in the yoga studio. If I see somebody that I've met in yoga at the grocery store, or if I see them even maybe out to eat, where they're in the complete like dress up kind of clothes, like nice clothing and stuff, versus yoga studio clothes and ponytails and no makeup. And of course I'm speaking of female primarily there, but even males, I have trouble recognizing them outside of the setting of where I met them. So to get back to this, I read this Mark had sent me, and I just can't thank you enough of that feedback and a very touching and well thought out email talking about the podcast that touched my heart. And that set off a relationship where I pretty quickly replied back to it and back and forth. And the next thing you know, I was in touch with Marshall too, and you guys were coming to the retreat, and the rest is history, as they say. Yep. And a new friendships have bloomed, and it's just cool because that's what we do here, right? I mean, ultimately, I I have read some stuff lately of some people like taking some hits at some of this stuff, and I don't understand. I found myself in this one little corner of 12 steps recovery that wants to like pick at everything, all these, like be real critical, and that's not my nature. I'm actually thinking about having to leave that little area of the universe. The flip side of that is I keep on getting wrung with that be the change you wish to see, you know, and if I leave it, then I've abandoned that opportunity, right? But that opposite of addiction is connection. Right. That I think it was Johann Harris is where I heard, where he's got a YouTube video out where that is said, and that's where I heard some people taking some pot shots at that little statement. I don't understand that being critical of this stuff. I want to add to, not take away from. And so that's where I was going with that, is it's additional connection with more friends and more people on the same wavelength. And my net cannot be strong enough or deep enough or wide enough, as far as I'm concerned, of people who are walking this thing in the same direction, hand in hand, doing this thing together. So thank you all for being my friend. And thank you for joining in this thing, man, because golly, what a blessing it is to have that. I didn't always have this, right? You didn't either. I mean, I didn't always have this. And a lot of groups don't have this. This connection at the level that we have been, bonding at in this group that we've got going on. So, Mark, welcome to the studio this morning after that big 6-minute intro.
Thanks, Dan.
So to follow up on that, your writing, your sharing, your different things that I've heard from you, you kind of discount yourself at some level. We all do. I like that. There's also something to that humility that I'm not trying to like be something. This is just, I'm just here doing my deal. But you also have a really cool way of presenting yourself, and again, it glows, and you glow, and that attraction is in full force. And so that's another thing about like why that intuition we have through these 12 steps doesn't lie to me very often anymore. So when I see that, I don't really question it too often, and I see you and I hear you and I'm like, yeah, man, I like I want what you have.
There you go.
Yeah. So welcome to the show. Had you thought about doing this?
Yeah, you've asked me a couple times and I keep putting you off, and my head wants to tell me it's because, well, I prefer to write things down. I can read it and reread it and rewrite it and tweak it and get it just right. Whereas if I'm sitting here and it's real time and we're looking each other in the eye, I'm going to miss stuff and it's not going to be right. And while that certainly plays a part, ultimately it comes down to fear. This is something that's uncomfortable. But that's fine.
Yeah,
that's part of what we do here. So,
and it feels uncomfortable on a certain level, But I mean, so the flip side of that is like it's a lot more comfortable standing in front of a room of people. I think, to me, it seems. I don't know. That might not be everybody's experience. What I do notice is that time after a little bit, this microphone disappears. And the guy at the other end of the table forgets about it. Okay. And he's just here and we're just talking, and I kind of can actually feel that shift happen at some point early in almost every episode. I feel that where the microphone disappears and you're just talking to me. Just like if we were sitting at the kitchen table inside the house with no microphones. I like that aspect of this thing. Glad to have you here. We'll start in the same question that we start with everybody that comes to the Spiritual Underground podcast, because it is, I put people in my phone as their sobriety dates and their birthdays. I don't put their birthdays because so it comes up and it says on August the 12th it said Marshall was 1 year old. So your sobriety date?
11/23/2017.
11/23/17. Very cool, man. And I don't think that's your first sobriety date, if I remember
it's
right.
not.
But we'll get to that. We probably ought to get to that and don't jump straight to there. We'll start the way we do start. So about like where were you born, what kind of family, that kind of stuff, and how did Mark come about?
I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas.
See, I always get to I get to be the recipient of this stuff that's new news, and I like that.
Cool. In Arkansas here, born and raised. Had a great home life. Alcohol really, it was like Marshall Sheridan, and if you haven't had a chance to listen to Marshall's podcast, go back and listen to it. It's really good. There was beer, in the bottom of the fridge, but my father would only drink, one or two every other day. I mean, it wasn't a problem, but it also wasn't taboo, right? So it was just there. I didn't think anything of it. Really had a great childhood, all the way up until I had to go out and interact in the world, which means school. So, normally this isn't part of my share, but
we get to go
thing.
into some things a little deeper here than you get the opportunity to in our normal environment. So I like that aspect too. I think it's important.
I was picked on. I'm smaller than most people, and I got teased a bit. And when we would let out for recess in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I would get chased down and I don't want to say beat up's not the right word, kicked at, but I mean, you're 5. How much of an injury is that? But I learned right away that I would hit the ground running at recess, man, and I would do circles around the perimeter of the playground, and the whole beat up thing probably only happened maybe half a dozen times, but in my head it was, I got to run, and
the threat was always there.
Yeah. But I think there was a bit of return on investment from the bullies. If they're running, it's much easier to catch old Sam over there who's got a Twinkie in his mouth. Right. He's just not going to be running that fast. They can go tease him. Yeah. So they left me alone for the most part.
Predators do go after easy opportunities.
That's right. But I mention it because it was a pattern of behavior that's going to repeat itself later on in my story. That when under threat, Mark runs, right? So
you and I have that in common.
Yeah.
My biggest conflict resolution tool is Bolt.
Yep. And back in the 70s, I walked home, and it was miles. And I don't think they'll let you do that now, but I would walk run different paths, so that I couldn't get pinned down and chased down and ambushed.
It's another thing we have in common. Really
so
is. I ran back to this very house we're sitting at.
Yeah.
A million different routes between down there and here. And I knew all of them, and I did not do the same ones 2 days in a row, man. I was not going to get patterned.
Absolutely. So while, the playground and after school was unsafe, I did find refuge in the classroom, and I excelled there. Academic all-star, kind of whatever. I don't think they put that label on it, but I did really well in school. Not much else to say there other than, I don't remember really my first drink, but I remember the first drug I had was a cigarette. And I mention that because of the way that it hit me and affected me. I was probably 15, 14, and one of my friend's stepfathers smoked, so we would steal those cigarettes. And for months, I'd been puffing on it in your mouth, but not really inhaling it, but kind of I wanted it to look that way, blow some smoke out your nose or whatever.
Cigar smoking it almost.
Yeah. But we were upstairs in his bathroom. I was sitting on those big cast iron ceramic tubs, and I inhaled for the first time, dude. It hit me like a freight train, and I fell over backwards and hit my head and I was just giggling like a schoolgirl. I was like, woo! And all I could think, more of this, please. More of this, please. Yeah. So,
and keep on bell ringing, man, because I have a similar experience, man, of that heady buzz off of a cigarette really early on.
Yeah.
Like having to sit down, I could not. I was so buzzed up, I had to brace myself and find a spot to sit for a minute. I remember I was sitting at a windowsill at a pizza joint down across the street from my high school.
I remember that feeling, man. More of that, and that quickly. I was very much into seeking out new things. So pot came along, alcohol came along, psychedelics came along, basically whatever I could get my hands on.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too hard to get any of those things, even alcohol, back in, I guess this was the late 80s at the time. So, there were laws, but I think everybody has that good friend who at 15 or 16 can grow like a full beard and just roll up in there and walk out with a 12-pack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I sidled up next to that guy.
Yeah, we always had people that would buy us alcohol, be it if it was an adults or people, friends who looked old enough, and they just weren't as tight, And the same thing with the cigarettes and stuff. There probably was a law about being how old you had to be, but it never stopped me from buying nicotine. I was rolling in, getting cans of dip and cigarettes way before, And I'm pretty sure the laws were in effect.
Yeah.
Just weren't enforced.
Oh, they had signs and whatnot, but I mean, come on.
And who knows, man? Maybe if I'd have walked in the liquor store too, they'd have served me too, but I just didn't ever have the balls to do it.
Right. So,
you just want to sell the product.
This was the era of Nancy Reagan's tough love. Do you remember that?
Yep.
So, for the most part, I didn't have consequences to the partying that I was doing. I did get caught several times by my parents. They'd find a steamroller, which is kind of a glass bong looking thing or whatever, so they knew what I was doing, and they were, not under my house kind of thing. And at one point they threw me in a psych ward for like a week or whatever, straitjacket, Thorazine, the whole nine. Yeah, lots of fun.
Because of the drug abuse, because of the using, or because you were other behaviors?
I think they were just scared and trying to figure out why in the world I would do drugs and other things. And, from their perspective, I can kind of see it. I mean, perfect childhood. I'm doing great at school. Why is he throwing this all away? But to me, it didn't look like I was throwing anything away.
Just having some fun.
And it's new, mind-opening, mind-altering experience. How can this be anything but grand, And
old fuddy duds.
So they kicked me out of the house when I was 16.
Really?
Yeah, can't live under my roof. So,
wow.
I think I was still in school, but I dropped out shortly after. But I'd already taken all the entrance exams to the colleges and whatnot, so this must have been my senior year. And I had a full ride scholarship to colleges and whatnot, so my thinking was, well, they've already accepted me. What do they care if I have a high school diploma or not, right? I mean, come on. I'm going anyway. I'm going to have a degree. Who needs a high school diploma? So yeah, I dropped out of school and started working at a gas station, living in a little hovel down in the seedy part of town. And
I still have trouble with these pop-top cans. We just got two new sparkling waters here, and it's going to sound like you hear that. And I didn't drink out of a can for a long time because canned beer was my deal, and that sound was a problem for me.
Triggers.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So
you're in high school. You already got a full ride scholarship academically.
Yep.
And so when they so then you're like, well, it's almost like I was just going to leave early. Hell, I was just going to.
Right, bounced, and just why not party for the rest of the school year, all through the summer. Boom, let's do college later on. That ended up not happening. Matter of fact, I mean, if I look back on everything, I've kind of led a bit of a semi-charmed life, honestly. I mean, I did crazy stuff, but at the same time, I've had all these like wonderful blessings and synchronicities put in front of me. And I mean, much more than staring a gift horse in the mouth. I'm picking that dude's teeth, man. I'm just shitting on the whole deal. But my parents came to me before college started and said, hey, we're going to Germany on a tour. He was with the Veterans Administration Hospital. He worked for them, so Department of Defense is what runs that. So he put in for a transfer to Frankfurt, and you were subsidized based on your dependents. So they would have more money for a nicer house or whatever in Frankfurt. As if they could get me to go along, you were dependent up until you were 21 or whatever. And I was just about to turn 18. I'm like, drinking age over there is 18, right? I'm like, oh, okay, well, what are the rules here? Because you guys have kicked me out, man. I mean, what? They were like, well, you can have your own.
What's the payoff for me?
Right. Well, it's in it for Mark. And so, we worked out a deal. And so I spent 3 years over in Europe, just traveling around, partying. Couldn't get pot over there, but we could get hash, no problem.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
Yeah.
So I had kind of an odd job sort of thing.
Smoked hash in Frankfurt myself, another thing we have in common.
So I partied over there 3 years and traveled all over Europe, and then came back and then looked up my old friends in whatever college town they were in, moved there, and took the entrance exams again. I didn't get a full ride scholarship at that point, but I got into college, no problem. Let's see. Dropped out. Yeah, never got a degree. I was going to be a chemical engineer, environmental engineer, save the planet. But, man, I just liked smoking weed and drinking beer, and this college thing was just a drag. You actually got to show up for class and whatnot. So
my biggest problem was homework. It was coming home in the evening and doing the work I was supposed to do in the evening. Class was okay.
I couldn't even show up for class, man.
Really?
I'd sleep until 3 p.m. and get up and go, oops. All right, well, start over
Dang
again.
It.
Yeah.
Tomorrow will be different.
But I met my future wife, and she didn't have the problems I had. She could go to class, academic, blah, 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 got her degree. And so we decided we were going to move. We were shacking up. We were going to move to Memphis so she could get her master's. And I would work to support us while she got her degree. And then once she got her degree, she could get her job. And then I'd go back to school. That was how that was going to work out. I always have grandiose plans.
Yeah.
None of that ever comes to pass, but
I have a plan.
So shortly after we got married, we bought a house, and had a friend who was in trouble. He started living there, and I came home one night, and she was in bed with him, and okay. So
and it wasn't because the heat was out.
Huh?
It wasn't because the heat was out.
No. But it wasn't that I didn't have a part to play in all that as well. You know, I was drinking and using and out and not paying attention or whatever. I mean, relationships are a two-way street.
Yep, absolutely.
But, the flip side of that was, hey, Mark got hurt. I ran. I left there with the clothes on my back and my laptop computer, and I was gone. Left town, left the state. And that right there, something inside me broke, and I didn't want to let anybody get that close ever again, right? So I was just on the run. But I clean up nice, well-spoken, I guess. I don't know. I can put on a suit and talk my way into a job. But I would never stay very long, year, 2 years. I think probably the longest I've ever been in a job before I was in sobriety was probably 2.5, not quite 3 years. And then I would get bored, or they would fire me, or I would think that I was about to get fired, which usually wasn't the case. Yeah. And I boom, just put everything in the car,
I'll fix this.
Yep. So, state to state. Let's see, my first DUI was, I guess, in the early 2000s, and I beat that ticket. It was one of those where it's your first one, everybody's fine, you have to go to some classes, pay off the lawyer, and it gets shuffled under the carpet kind of thing.
Spend a little money, really.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Are,
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a few grand or
whatever. I don't
whatever.
think they really care if you're at the class. They care if you paid for it.
Yeah. But I think that might have been like the first like real introduction to AA, where they force you to go, you get your little paper sign kind of thing. I don't remember if it was 12 weeks or what have you. But you're sitting in the rooms and you see the banners on the wall, and I can read the steps. I'm seeing God and
screw that
spiritual, and I'm an intellectual. I pray at the altar of science, man. I don't. It's a bunch of voodoo hootenanny. I don't need that. So that wasn't going to work for me. That just wasn't an option. And I go out and back to the madness, man. At some point, my drinking got to the point where my pancreas swelled up. Pancreatitis. I don't know if that's a bad deal.
Yes.
Your organs swell up. They got no place to go. It's kind of like that Alien movie with the thing that shoots out of your chest, except it never leaves.
It's one of those other little things that we soft sell, What that really means is you're going to die soon if you don't do something.
Right. That's what they told me. They're like, oh, your liver's jacked, dude. They're showing me MRIs and whatever. They're pointing to these and I didn't hear that. I heard, well,
I got a little inflammation.
I need to switch to beer. That's what I heard. Lay off the hard stuff. So I lay off the hard stuff for a while. I don't know, but I'm back to it at some point, and I just know I gotta taper up to it. I gotta walk a fine line, man. But I'm young. The body heals, not a problem. The whole time, man, I'm battling my head, like the past. I'm starting to, at this point, to drink to shut down the memories. I've just got this internal monologue that never stops, man, and can argue its way out of any box that I try and put it in. So I'm trying to shut it down. And alcohol did that for me, kind of to give you a sort of feel for that insanity. I got pulled over one time by the cops drunk, and I was maybe 3 blocks from my house, but it was blizzard, snowing, whatever, and the cop gets out and we do the field sobriety check, and somehow I pass a thing, and he says, okay, count backwards from 100 by sevens. And I'm like, well, wait, what? And I couldn't believe that, like, the first thing out of my mouth was, dude, I couldn't even do that if I was sober.
Right, yeah.
Somehow that didn't fly out of my mouth. I don't know how, but I actually did the math. And I counted backwards from 100 by sevens. And I probably missed one or two. I kind of have it was one of those, like, jolts of adrenaline, like, oh, shit, I got to do math, dude. And I was, like, suddenly sober there for a second. So I have this like ingrained memory of shit. I think I skipped like 51, or whatever.
Yeah, I missed a number.
But I guess I got enough of them right. 7. He let me go. And, a normal person would go, well, either I should stop drinking, or at the very least I should stop drinking and driving, right? Because now I got to do math, and I've already had one DUI. No, none of that even entered my mind.
When I went to the BMV, they never said a word about math.
Nothing. My solution was to spend every night as I was going to sleep counting backwards from 100 by sevens. Yeah. And I could do it. Big time. I got pulled over in 2010. And I had to read this on the police report yesterday because I remember none of this. I got out. I did the field sobriety, touch your nose and walk the straight line. And the guy said, count backwards from 100 by ones. And as soon as I read that on the report, I'm like, oh, shit, this is not good, man. So apparently, according to the cop, I got down to about 60. And I said, dude, this is way too easy. How about I do it by sevens for you? Off to jail goes Mark. So, I had invested hundreds, thousands of hours at that point, and count backwards. Of course, I'm going to do that. It just doesn't occur to me to stop drinking, right? Never.
I just learned how to do it better. I just always had to figure out where the magic bullet was, whatever it was. You've heard me say about like getting DUIs. I did it because I had a tail light out. So I did the pilot checklist before I would leave the house, walk around. If I had a friend, all right, turn on left turn signal. All right, so check. Vehicle's ready to fly. Let's go, brother.
So,
I'm not going to stop drinking and driving.
No. And I think around that time I'd been hospitalized for another bout of pancreatitis again. And that time they quit giving me the pain meds, intravenously. And I'm like, well, what the hell am I doing here? So I just pulled the IV out and walked out the hospital. I'm like, okay, I guess we switch back to beer again.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, it was never a thought to stop entirely. And I smoked pot on and off, heavily there at first, before age 21. But that's how I know that, like, I'm not an addict. I could always just drop that like a hot rock if I ever needed to. If I needed to get a job, I stopped and passed a drug test. But alcohol was always on the table, always part of the equation. I could never put that down. Like, even when I would try, something would happen, I'd pick it back up. So I don't really think I'm an addict, although, who knows. But alcoholism, yeah, definitely, man. I can't quit.
Always thought, from my experience, I would feel whatever it was something. I would constantly just swinging through and patting myself on the back that I'd stopped this. I've stopped methamphetamine, but I've moved on to something else, and I'm doing, and even when I went from cocaine to methamphetamine, I looked at it being some kind of difference, and there was some gap in between it, but I didn't register it. I know that I'm, because I just like and I get that we are wired for certain things, like how somebody might do food,
Yeah.
So I think there is a predisposition to lean towards certain chemicals, and food would be one of them, and maybe not another. In a pinch, anything will do for Dan.
That's right. Yep.
Anything.
Anything will do for Mark as well. Whatever you got, especially if you're buying.
Yeah.
But absolutely. So I don't know. I did that for about 20, 25 years.
You did a trip, man. That all of a sudden, like, you remember, that's the way my story to go. So I got to this point, and then it's just like I just jumped on the merry-go-round, and I just went around and around and around in a circle for 25 years or something.
Yeah.
And I really don't know exactly. I mean, we sit down and talk. I can tell you some things that happened in that window.
Right.
But ultimately, really what I know is I was just going around and around and around in the same damn merry-go-round. And I might switch a horse now and again. On the merry-go-round, I might jump off one and get on the horse next to it every now and again.
Right.
But it was the same thing. And man, it flashed forward like at 25 years. Bam.
Boom. Yep.
And I don't really, it's hard for me, again, I'd do that little thing. If I knew I was going to be retelling this story, I'd kept better track. I could go back and kind of tally that up, but it doesn't really matter. It was a long time of this cycle of addiction, alcoholism.
Yeah. And I apologize to you and the listeners if I jump back and forth in my story, because it's all a blur, and I don't have, like, solid timelines except for maybe traumatic events.
Yep.
Yep. For me, I never had furniture. I was renting houses. If I couldn't fit it in my car, I didn't need it. I didn't own it, and I would just bounce from job to job, state to state.
Yeah, when you like to fly light like that and jump out of situations, you don't want to have a big burden of a bunch of shit to deal with.
That's right. And, I had girlfriends and maybe even significant others. We'd lived together for a while, but, my disease got in the way. Ultimately, I wasn't going to let them get close, so screw that noise. If something pissed me off, I'm not going to compromise. Just screw it, dude. I'll get in the car and I'll go to Colorado or whatever. You know, suit up, clean up, take a shave, and get another job and start all over, man. So I found myself out in San Diego in 2000, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, something like that. Living with a girl out there, and I got that DUI, and they took my car away, and I just paid rent, so I didn't have the money to get it out of impound. And every day it's there, it's like another $60 or $40 or whatever. I wouldn't get paid for another 2 weeks, so the car was gone. I mean, basically, it was a, beater anyway, so meh. It was my second DUI, so I lost my license for 2 years. It was actually just supposed to be a year, but I fought it thinking I could get away with it, and ended up dragging it out longer than it needed to be. I would have been much better off just going, yeah, you got me. But I'm like, nah, I've never had another DUI. I don't know what you're talking about. They're like, no, we don't know. Anyway, at least in San Diego, public transit is a thing, and you can get around. So, I didn't lose a job. But shortly after that, she kicked me out the house for just being a douche or whatever. Put a restraining order on me. So now I'm homeless, carless.
Big douche.
Yeah.
Don't get kicked out. The restraining order is another one of those. Just this little thing.
It's just a restraining order. And homeless in San Diego, maybe that's like homeless light. It's not particularly a hardship. Like, it doesn't freeze there. It might get cold, but I was paid all right. So basically what I would do is sleep outside for 6 days and then get a hotel room, shower and clean up, and go in the next week. And I was dragging around everything I could fit in one of those little carry-on luggage things. Just drag that scudder all over. And I wore the wheels off that thing. And I can't point to one thing and go, oh, well, that's the catalyst. Because DUIs aren't going to stop me. Getting kicked in that, homeless is not. None of this stuff is going to stop me. But at some point, I just snapped and said, look, I don't want to do this anymore. And I called my boss and said, hey, cut me a check for whatever days I've worked. I'm getting a one-way ticket out of here. I don't even know where I'm going to go. And he was like, whoa, hold on. You're doing great work. We love you. We love what you're doing. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I'm a total fuck up. Oh, no. Come on in. We got this guy. He's in recovery. Talk to him. We'll smooth this over. Don't worry about it. So I'm like, all right, man, whatever. And I was just broken. At this point, I'm a zombie just walking around. And this guy tells me where there's a beginners meeting in San Diego. He didn't actually go to this meeting. Found out why later. He was still using and had a big one over on the employers.
The company, yeah.
Yeah. But he was like, you can go over here. Yeah. He was one of those chronic relapsers. They'll show up in the rooms.
I went for years pretending to be sober.
Yeah,
I did, and I do that same thing. I tell you right where you need to go. I would take you to a meeting.
Yeah,
but I was not sober.
But the beautiful thing happened there, man. I sat in the back of this beginners meeting up in Old Town, San Diego, and I was just busted up, dude. I was crying in the back row. Just, I couldn't tell you what anybody shared. I don't even know. I was just like, well, what is all this come to? And at the end of the meeting, man, the first person who walked up to me and shook my hand, looked me square in the eye and said, you never have to take another drink again. I was like, will you be my sponsor? Absolutely. Boom. And I did what he told me to do. I didn't know that guy from Adam. Couldn't even, I don't know if he shared that night or whatever, but he reached out, man, and absolutely saved my life. He took me through the steps. And that was an amazing journey.
And that was when?
2010. So my first sobriety day was February 15th, 2010. within 6 months of just like going to meetings every day and like meeting a tribe of folks, man, they were like, hey man, we're going to the international convention in San Antonio, come along. Like they didn't even ask, right? There wasn't, oh, can you get off work or whatever. It was, you're coming. And they threw me in a car and we drove to San Antonio and the international AA convention. And that was amazing. Amazing for my sobriety, for me, and just as an experience. And that's one of the beautiful things I think that you've got going on with that spiritual retreat out at your cabin. You've got to get a lot of guys early in sobriety, 6 months, 5 months, coming out and being a part of in a big group like that around a fire, man. And I can see the lights start coming on in their eyes, man. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man, it is.
So,
speaking of that, we'll be going to Detroit next year too,
right
as
on.
a group.
Before? Oh, the international convention. That's right.
4th of July time frame next year.
Okay.
So we'll keep our eyes and ears open. And my sponsor's gone, I don't know how, but I've heard how many years ago and all that. But he talked about San Antonio. Last time it was in Atlanta.
Yep.
And this time it's in Detroit.
Yep. It's every 5 years. Yeah. So, yeah, if you got a new sponsee, grab him by the scruff of the neck and take him to Detroit, man.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. So I was, I don't know, on fire, man. I'm going to meetings, doing the whole thing, and I don't know, year 4, I just start dragging. I'm like, man, this is a lot of damn work. It's meetings every day. This is like a big part of my life here. I gotta dial this back.
That's some other stuff to do.
So I don't know, if I thought that all those years of not drinking entitled me to be able to drink like a gentleman, or I'm sure I read that part in the book 100 times and it's probably stuck in my head. Oh, well, you're obviously not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
You hadn't had a drink in over a year. In fact, it's been about 4. You're fine, dude. You're fine, right? So when somebody passed me a pipe, a little bit of that California smokage, boom, I'm off and running. And at that point, well, I'm not going back to AA after having a couple hits off. Oh,
yeah. Can't go in there and tell them that.
Nah. So let's look at all these craft beers and then scotch and then da-da-da. And then I'm just like, you know what? Screw San Diego. I'm leaving. So I bounce out of there. I cash out my 401k and I just go partying through the countryside for a year. And found myself in Kentucky, of all places. I really like it here, but I certainly wouldn't have picked that spot. Got a great job somehow. I don't know. These things, like I said, it's a semi-charmed life. God working in my life, maybe even.
Right. Yeah.
Even through my drinking and using. I just don't see those synchronicities when I'm in a blackout.
Right.
So.
I think that's what he means by blocked from the spirit and those kind of terms. I'm not capable of having that.
Yep.
Even when it's happening for me, and when I get some clarity, I can see where I've had a higher power working in my life from the get-go. But the curtain falls in a second with any kind of chemical for an alcoholic like me. As soon as I get to using, I don't know any of that.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is maybe tied to willingness in sobriety, but I've found that the more broken I am, the closer the veil between this world and the spiritual seems to be. Like when I'm busted up, man, I can see the miracles. They're almost visible, tangible. You can see those strings of whatever that is between people and between things, which sounds a little bit hokey, but and maybe it's just desperation. At that point you're reaching out for anything that's there, maybe seeing things that are not. But By the same token, I'm choosing to look at it like that's God reaching out to me, man. So I tried AA in Kentucky because at this point, even though I'm drinking heavily, I got a good job, things are not going well because Mark's head is Mark's head, and it's always talking, man. And it's starting to get to the point where I can't blot it out anymore, right? And I'm running up against that bodily wall of pancreatitis now. So the dosage is going up to, almost a fifth a day, and I can't stop the voices, and I'm starting to feel those chest pains again. And by the way, just public service announcement, if you're having pancreatitis, do not go to an ER room and tell them that you're having chest pains. Because they'll think it's a heart attack, and it's just no bueno. Don't do it. Just come clean from the get-go. Tell them, no, I've been drinking. It's not my heart. Just, there you go. I'll just throw that out there for you. But I popped into the rooms of AA in Kentucky, and it wasn't like the rooms of AA in San Diego. People were different, and they didn't read chapter 3, and oh, no, this is just absolutely not going to work for Mark. So, boom, I'm, off drinking to the bitter end, man. I'm going to go. And so, I don't know, November-ish of 2017. I'm getting to the point where I'm taking my gun apart, putting it back together, and putting it to my head and squeezing the trigger with a full magazine. I'm just wanting to blow my brains out. But not. I mean, there was some part of me that was like, dude, this is not good. And the rest of me is like, fuck it, we've done this over and over. I don't want to go through it again. I'm having this mental, back and forth. And I don't know, the part that wanted to live won. And I drove to the emergency room and told them I wanted to kill myself, and that's a great way to get a 72-hour hold.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's another one of the things when you go to the emergency room. You need to be real careful when you drop that one, too.
Yep.
You better want to stay for a little while.
Yep, and I didn't want to go there, but that's also where I work, so a little bit of a stigma there. What are you going to do?
Yep.
Right?
Well, it does get immediate attention. So, in another regard, I have heard people tell people when they go someplace they didn't have insurance to use that kind of language.
Yeah.
And they will take you.
Yeah.
They have to.
Yeah. So, I think I was in there maybe a week. At this point, my boss who works there obviously knows what's up.
So
but he popped.
Working at the same place you're working at the hospital.
Oh yeah.
So they know when you walk in there and do this.
Oh yeah. Well, as soon as I hit the ER room and
okay.
They know. I mean, they're not supposed to know HIPAA and all that, but
right. Yeah.
Come on,
but what's your name, sir?
It's not like I flash my employee badge, but they know. Anyway, he showed up and he's like, "Man, we love you. We love what you're doing." My head, again, I'm nothing but a fuck up. I have no idea. I think the world's about to just crumble in. I'm about to be fired any day. This is all just a lark, I'm just skating my way through it just like I've been doing. But once again, somebody reached out, and this, these weren't people in the program. They were just like, hey. And at this point, I know what I need to do. The solution's been in my life.
Right.
I just need to go back and do AA.
Easier said than done.
Yeah. And you mentioned in Marshall's podcast a little bit earlier about how the light doesn't shine as bright, maybe the second time around. And I won't necessarily disagree with that, but I will say that it was a little bit easier the second time around.
Was it?
Because the first time that I walked into the rooms, I didn't have a higher power. I rejected that. I was convinced that this wasn't going to work for me, right? But I did the work, I did the steps, and it worked in spite of that.
Yeah.
Right? Blew me away.
Yeah.
Right? So, who is it?
Most of those things are kind of like your mileage may vary kind of thing,
Yeah.
as far as when people's experiences and having a second time and a first time,
Right.
So like that, that little thing I pop out there about it's easier to stay sober than it is to get sober, alludes to how hard it is to get sober again. But frankly, that is not everyone's experience.
Right.
And at some level, when I come back in 2014 to hit my current 2015 sobriety date, that was actually easier too, for the same reason you shine some light on that, because I already had some recovery and knew kind of what I had. I had a flashlight this time when I walked. I wasn't just walking into the dark. I was like, okay, I know these guys. I've seen it. I've seen it's working for them. Matter of fact, when I met them 4 years ago, they're still here sober. So that's more proof that it's working. So hadn't really thought about that. It felt harder in one regard, but one of the things is for me it was more painful because the consequences have been ratcheted up to a point that really had me hurting.
Absolutely.
Had me scared, really.
Yeah.
The fear was so high that and that worked to my advantage too.
Right.
But
The first time I didn't want to do the whole cycle again. The second time I was just about to end my own life.
Yeah.
Right. I hadn't lost my car. I hadn't lost the house. I hadn't lost the job.
And so you're walking up.
But I'd completely.
I know you
lost
got that
my
toolbox. Open it up and let's get it out. The
Yeah.
first time around, you're going, that toolbox don't work.
What toolbox?
Yeah.
But an old speaker
Interesting.
put it really well. The difference between belief and faith, in that say that I have a toilet that's exploded, right? I'm not a plumber, but I know Dan, so I called Dan. I'm like, hey man, do you know a plumber? Yeah, I know this guy. Shane's great. I mean, killer. He'll does great work on time and fair price. Now, if I believe Dan, I'm gonna make that call. Shane's gonna come over, fix my commode. Everything's good. Now, the next time that my garbage disposal blows out, I don't have to call Dan, right? I just pick up the phone and call Shane, because I've already had the experience of Shane coming in, fixing it right up. That's the difference between the first time I walked in, there was a belief, there was a hope. The second time, there was faith that was there. I knew it worked.
Really
right?
good point.
I just needed to put in the work, do the steps, get a sponsor, go to meetings. I mean, it's effort. It's a hard walk, but I know that it saved my life, right? And I think you're right. I don't think I'm shining as bright as I did when I first walked in the door, but maybe it's tempered by the fact that the rug could completely come out from under me if I stop what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
If I let up on this accelerator. Marshall talked about it as well. Want more, seek more, keep going, man. There's always more there.
Yep.
And
the word's used over and over. Continue. Continue.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful thing. It takes a lot of time, energy, love, but the rewards are immense. So,
It's what I do, period. I did finally surrender to that, instead of trying to fight it and try to make it a part-time gig and all that, is put it primary in my life and let everything else come behind it.
Absolutely.
And it's working good for now. And anytime I think about otherwise, I have that. And I also get really good examples thrown at me if I keep my eyes open.
Right.
Of where that didn't work. Same way when this, I have this little bit of different thing about the coming to believe. Some of my coming to believe was watching it working for other people.
Right.
Not so much that I came to believe something was going to help me, that this thing was going to do anything for me. I came to believe it was working for him or in her and all that. Well, in the same regard, just exactly the same, except for polar opposite, I also have come to believe that when you stop, the rug gets pulled out from underneath you pretty bad. And I watch people, and fact of the matter is, and I'll say it once again, people die.
Yes.
It's not just a matter of just slipping up and having another chance.
Yeah. This disease
the gun,
is fatal.
the playing with the gun does not, that time around.
Yeah.
That won't be that's the next time they pull it off.
Right.
or something else gets them.
Right.
Or the next dose around here, lately is the fatal one.
Yeah, I can't underscore that enough. This thing is a fatal disease and will kill you in a minute.
Yeah.
And I'm just blessed to be sitting here in front of you talking to you now, because it very well could have happened another way. And I'm sure if they're parallel universes, 99 out of 100, I'm not sitting here talking to you.
Yep.
Guaranteed.
Same thing here for sure. That you just don't really find that many people that come in here and get it long-lasting recovery out of the gates. Once in a while, you see somebody do that. But our egos and all of our other stuff that goes on that wants to fight it and control it and do it by my plan has to, all that stuff seems, it's like a rite of initiation almost. Like you almost have to go down this little path of fighting it and doing this other stuff and finding out that no, it didn't actually work and your way ain't working. And hopefully you survive that.
Yeah.
To find the spot where you actually get traction and keep going, and then you also get the stories of people being around for a long time that decide to drink again.
Absolutely.
Burns always, he's the person I heard say it first, and he says, "Dims that don't go to meetings don't know what happens to dims that don't go to meetings." So if we keep on showing up at 12-step meetings, we keep hearing these stories, then I know that's kind of like the keeping it green thing or whatever. I hear those stories. I stay home, and what this computer up here will start chucking old information.
Yeah.
And some of the old information is that I can't drink. And one day I believe that I can again.
Yep.
And I hear it over and over again. And so, to not actually heed that advice, after time and time again,
right.
I mean, if I go walk up to that door and I slam my finger in that door, you're all going to believe it hurt, right? And you shouldn't go up and do it yourself. You should see me do it. And go, but we seem to have to go, I don't know if it hurt that bad. I'm going to go up there and slam my finger in that door too.
I'm pretty sure it
won't
didn't.
hurt me.
It's pretty sure it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you have that. So you only had 4 years. Is that what you said at one point?
I took a 5-year token in San Diego.
You
so
did?
I had 5, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But at that point, I was backing out, man. Just showing up at meetings. I'd cease sponsoring other men. Cease my commitments. In fact, I think I just bailed out of several, which is, an absolute no-no.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were people all around me going, he's headed for a relapse. Nobody told Mark, Or if they did, I didn't listen. Yeah, or wouldn't care,
But other times I couldn't hear it for whatever reason, I got fair warning all along. But I just... It wasn't, and it made it into my consciousness, but I just couldn't hear it enough to do anything about it, to change my course that I was on. That's where I get into this thing about alcoholism being like a parasite that hijacks my operating system, and sometimes I'm no longer in control. As much as I want to write my course, there's some core being that I think, and that's where that comes into that. Well, I like that definition of spiritual sickness is that it's not a religious thing. It's not a deity-based kind of thing. What I'm talking about is that very spirit that resides inside of me, my soul, my essence that is Dan, is sickened. And once it's poisoned and sickened, it's still down there trying to go this way. That's not the right way, Dan. But it's a really small little voice. It's the Jiminy Cricket in the Pinocchio trying to get you to go the right direction. But the disease has me, and I'm on autopilot, and I get carried off. That actually helps me a great deal when I look at other people doing stuff. What I would say is really stupid things. Powerlessness really is what all this is. Powerlessness and unmanageability, whether if you're using or not.
Yeah.
And give them some latitude that's not really. Just like the book says, it's grant them that they got spirit, that they're spiritually sick, rather than just being jerks or making dumb moves on purpose. That they are on something. Something has a joystick called Dan.
Yeah.
And it's driving it down this way. Yeah, I'd like to get. Wave my hand in front of the face, man, but it still can't break the trance, and I'm off go in some other direction.
So, yeah.
Sometimes they'll listen. I had a guy call last night. This is completely off topic to some extent, but nothing's off topic like this. Out of the blue, Facebook friend request. I look, I see I have friends with him. I look at him. I do recognize him a little bit. It all seems legit. Got to be real careful because I get all kinds of fake ones today. So I do a little exploration to make sure it looks legit. And I friend it, and they message me in just a minute, which is usually a bad thing. Because usually it's usually only those robots and those people looking for you that do that.
Yeah.
But he wants some help and he wants a call, and so I talked to him, and then I put 2 and 2 together. I remember where I knew him from, and he's hurting.
Yeah.
And I asked him last night, "Do you want to stop?" And he said no. I said, "Well, man, call me when you do."
Yes.
And I said, "I just don't spend a lot of time talking to drunk people.
But it's
I'm not going to nurse you. I'm not, So I said, to some extent, and one of the things that the guy explained to me early on was like in the Ghostbusters movies when you get slimed.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Well, when I'm dealing with an active alcoholic, sometimes I'm walking away feeling slimed.
Okay. Right.
And one of the dynamics is that they've talked to me and they've siphoned some of my serenity off, and they feel a little better, But I walk off feeling worse.
And need a shower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just don't really do that much, and I can be really honest with somebody. And I just told him that today. Yeah, last night. Hey man, call me when you're sober. Happy to talk. I don't talk to.
Call me when you're ready to get sober.
And if he just wants to talk tomorrow, I'm okay. I'll be a support person, but I'm just not going to deal with drunkenness and all the shit that comes with that. Whether if it's victimhood and about how everybody else's fault, that's what comes with an active drunk.
Yeah.
Is all that, and I'm just not going to sit here. It's not. You can't talk to him. You can't get through to him. If I thought that I could convince him, but you can't. Anyway, a guy called, so I told him, my thing is you need to go detox. If you can't stop drinking, go detox.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you because I'm not going to put you on my couch and detox you. Book says something about people doing that. I'm not doing that. Kids
that was
and
1930s.
Yeah, right. Yep. And they didn't have what we have available to us today. But he called this morning again, and he was a mess.
Mm.
And that's also you get into he's already started drinking this morning on a Sunday morning. It was prior to 10 a.m.
Been there, done that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And although I wasn't, I'm not going to, it doesn't matter. I really wasn't too much of that. I always felt so bad after drinking so hard the night before that I usually didn't. I usually had a limp back into action kind of effect in the mornings, but it took me a while to get back to where I could actually put something in me. I know that's different people's experiences and the way it works. But anyway, so we got a crying, really upset drunk dude on the telephone, and he finally, after a minute, he said he's gonna, here's what you do, man. I don't know what else to tell you is to go to a detox. I don't want to lose my job. You're going to lose your job anyway.
Probably.
They'll fire me. Nope. They actually almost can't. That's first time.
True.
They don't have to send you back over and over and over again to rehab. You will wear out your welcome there. But most employers, if you come on bended knee and say, "Hey, man, I have a problem.
Yes.
I'm unable," even throw some stuff in there. Say, "Man, I've talked to a counselor. They suggested I go do detox. I'm going to go do that, or else I'm going to be no good to you guys."
Right.
And they're going to let you go. Every employer around is going to say, "Okay, go take care of yourself." But he thinks he's going to get, we think we're going to get fired and we can't lose this job that we're going to lose anyway.
That's absolutely the reason that I never went to the 30-day, we've got the recovery, whatever, all around.
Yep.
I always was convinced I would lose my job. Yep. So just the amount of time that it took to actually separate me from alcohol for 3 days or a week and get just some distance. And then I went into the rooms. And I've met a lot of people who come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. You take away the alcohol, they're fine. Like, they get better. I immediately was worse because my head just started roaring. Not only about, I need what I need to be better, but also that chatter came back, those memories,
the quintessential deal on the alcohol was not your problem, it was your solution.
Exactly.
And now what are you got to do to get a new solution?
Exactly. So I went to my sponsor real early on. I mean, like step one Okay, step 2, I'm like, I don't know about this whole God thing, but my head won't shut up. I'm like, what's this meditation? So I went like 1:11, and he said, well, I don't really meditate, but my sponsor does. Go talk to him, right? So he funneled me off to a guy who did some kind of Buddhist kind of thing where it's like a mantra chat, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo kind of thing. You say it over and over and over again. And okay, that worked. That quieted the mind for a little bit, but I wanted more, man, because that was working, right? So I'm looking around, and I have eventually tried probably half a dozen different types of meditation, and pick and choose a little bit from wherever. But
Me too.
you know, that actually absolutely saved my bacon because it kept my head back in check, you know, to where some of this sobriety and serenity could come in, because otherwise I'm just a madhouse. I mean, it's just not good in Mark's head.
That is the whole thing about, to me, I mean, that's a big piece of meditation, is retraining his brain to like be calm and not be skitsy the way it is when I didn't have alcohol or when I removed it.
Right.
And again, I say over and over again, I don't think this program's an a la carte thing where I get to pick it. I'm not going to meditate. I don't do that.
I would
I don't
recommend
sponsor other guys. I'm just not really built to do that. I don't.
I know a bunch of people who don't, though.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
But you know what I do see is I see that's where that level of recovery is not the kind of guy that when Marshall was talking was going, I want some of that.
Yep. Right.
You know, nobody's doing that to those guys. I want some of that.
Right.
You know, it's to me, I had to do all 12 steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
To get the whole effect.
Yeah, and make no mistake, I am not
3/4 of my antibiotic.
Yeah.
I'm
not good at meditation. It's difficult. Like that's what I hear from most people is I can't do that.
Still.
It's hard. You know,
my
I don't
mind
want to
races.
sit. I don't want to sit. My head just wanders off.
Can't
I'm
shut down my
that's
brain.
kind of the point, right?
That's exactly why we do it. That's usually my answer is exactly why we do it. It's the same thing when people go to me, I'm not flexible enough to do yoga. So that's like saying you're too dirty to take a bath.
Right.
Well, that is why we do it.
Exactly.
So just to tap off of that one thing, I did tell that guy, he said he's going to rehab today, going to detox today. And I said, well, text me when you go as you're walking in the door so I know that you did it. And a couple hours later, I got a text that said he was going in.
Sweet.
So, cool.
Prayers. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope he gets it. You know, again, my life is wrapped up around carrying this message.
Yeah.
Everything else I'm doing is in effort so that I can do this.
Yeah. Someone said it really eloquently. They said when people ask, "What do you do for a living?" I stay sober. I mean, that's not what you tell them.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's the truth.
Right. I stay sober. Oh, well, you mean what do I do for money?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's over here.
Yeah.
Now I get those two things mixed up.
To live,
I'm drunk.
Yeah.
I've got to keep it. I've got to keep my sobriety above the horizon. You know, and that's one of the beautiful things about the spiritual underground. You guys are on fire, dude. You walk in there, you get charged.
You do,
right? And I walk out of there, and
electric.
I got goosebumps, dude. I got them now, man. It's a way for me to keep the lights on, because if they go dim, Mark's back to old behaviors, and it's easy. I've done it to go back out into the madness, and I don't want that. I know where that is, right? So I keep searching. I keep moving forward. I keep reaching out, you know, and the synchronicities that took place for me to walk into the room of the spiritual underground, you call them miracles, you know, and they are to a certain degree. It's just,
you know, and if there are miracles, if other people want to call them like that, that's up to you. For me, they were miracles. My friend showing me the spiritual underground and walking in there and hearing things that were different than what I've been hearing, whether or not if they were any different than what I've been hearing. I heard them different. My experience there was different, and it was a turning point in my life because I ran into these guys, and I watched the same thing happen when other people run into us too.
it's
and I know it's happening in other places too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to begin to say we have a monopoly on that either.
No.
But it's the one I'm aware of today. And how many chances do I really think I'm going to have to like grab this in my lifetime to bump into another one? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hold dearly to the one I have at the moment.
Absolutely. At the same time, I want to reach out, add to.
Oh, like me too. I want to pull people.
Oh man.
And take this and put it other places. You know, I mean, that's the main. That is why this is the Spiritual Underground podcast. It's an attempt to try to get this other places,
and it's doing it,
and attract people to us too. At the same time.
I kind of skipped over the fact that when I was first in sobriety without a car, walking to work, I'd put headphones in, man, and listen to speaker tapes.
Yeah.
And those absolutely saved my bacon, because when I was listening to a speaker tape, my head was not talking to me.
Yeah.
And then when I didn't have those going, I was either at work or at a meeting. But, and one of the, I was talking with Marshall about this earlier, one of the things I like about this particular format is that it's not a speaker tape, it's a conversation, right? It's not as polished, right? And it seems to me more genuine, more authentic than somebody standing up there and giving a spiel. They probably, not that it's not unimportant or important, but it's been honed. They're listening for the laughs and maybe tweak it a little bit here, a little bit there.
Yeah.
That's not this at all.
Yeah. Especially when it's, when it is like polished circuit type speakers, and not to take anything away from that, man, because I got one of them coming in next week. But I get it. And that was my intent here. This was to be, not a sterile thing. This was supposed to be and I don't know why I was led to think of this, to do it. I don't know if anybody else is doing it or not. I found a couple other kind of things that are similar to this, but don't match this. To be like it's in a conversational. First for a while I was calling it a kind of interview, but it's really not.
Yeah.
It's more like you said, a conversation than that.
This microphone actually disappeared earlier. I don't know if you caught that.
It does. It ends up going away, man, because we just start talking, just like if we were sitting at the kitchen table and you were like 12-stepping me or something,
Right.
In a sense, you're telling me what happened to you as a result of this, and that's what the big book says. We tell them what we have done, what we did, and it tells again, if you're thinking about what happened, tell them what happened to you. That's how we carry this thing. It says it twice in that book, at least, of how we do this thing is carrying it by saying what your experience, sharing your experience, and what happened to you as a result of this. So I get to hear that. So like you gave me the ultimate compliment a minute ago, because you just hit like on all the things I'm aiming at when as I'm doing this thing. I don't want it sterile. The air compressor kicks on once in a while. We hear us opening up cans of beverage. Chairs scoot around. People. I always have crystals on this table, and invariably somebody drops one, and it hits the table and clack. That's not the message. We're everyday people. We cuss, we laugh, we screw up when we're talking. We search for words. We sit here with periods of silence. That's all part of what we really. That's real. That's what we really do, not the. Not the polish.
Right. I want to track back to something you said about miracles, because we throw that word around a lot, and I know you really like it. For me, this is not the Red Sea parting kind of thing, right? But they are things that mean a lot to me, that cut deep, right? And they're things that I can use to help me along in sobriety, right? Now, I can't lean on those kinds of things. I hear a lot of people say, well, I always remember my last drunk. Man, it says it in the book that at the worst possible time, you're not going to be able to call to mind the memory of the pain and suffering of even a day or a week, right? And that's absolutely true. So, we lean on each other, the power of the fellowship, right? And we lean on our higher power. Right. That's actually, but at the same time, man, you can't discount the power of a miracle. These, what we call miracles, let's call it a miracle. Okay, fine. It works for me. It's keeping me sober. It helps when I can think about it. I just can't always count on having that in my back pocket all the time, because, when the worst possible time comes, I'm probably not going to be thinking about whatever that is.
Right.
You know, higher power has to get involved. You know, Marshall picks up the phone and calls me. You know, something. You know, at the end of the day, we're all just sitting around trying not to die, right? And we're helping each other along the way, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. You know, and in the same vein, you know, I was sitting there doing that. People's lives around me are like awesome. I mean, I have stories around me that I can point to on a time and time again basis. And when people come in and they're hurting, I got all these examples to point at. And now I actually can like go say, hey, listen to their story. This is my buddy. This is my sponsee. This is my friend. This is my sponsor. These are not people out. Earl tells a great story, right?
Yep.
We don't know him. I don't know him. Maybe one of you two do. But I know you. And when that guy hears your story, I can say, hey, man, I want to introduce you to Mark. Are you the... And like comes down to like grounding, you know, and it's not movie star looking status, you know, and it's not really that, you know what I mean? But that is that's outside my reach. Yeah. These are just stories that are on the internet. And they're good stories. But these are our stories right here. I can introduce you to these people.
I know.
Here's
I know
their
many
phone.
of them.
Yeah, I know. I've been to somebody new walking up.
Sure.
I have a whole new toolbox and a new way to participate in my recovery by handing somebody something that's actually way more tangible. You were saying something earlier about being able to feel it.
Yeah.
You know, I can put you. You know, I can give you this guy. You related to what he said? Well, here's you want his number?
Bang. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is really cool, man. I'm loving doing it. I'm having a blast doing it, man. I just get jacked up. I've shared this before, too. You know, after the fact, I have a come down in about 20, 30 minutes after the podcast. I go, wrong. And because of the emotional investment, it's what the best I've heard, best I've talked about, or best I've learned on it is that sitting here and giving this emotional investment across the table like that. And I've started noticing too that actually when I do 12-step work, when I'm working with a sponsee or something, I have a similar thing, but it's usually in a smaller bite. And I'll notice that I'll have a little period of exhaustion kind of after it, where I just kind of want a minute to, or if I'm going to take a nap or just chill for a few minutes. And then that's okay. Actually, I think that's like a really good, that's a good thing. In my mind, I don't mean to make it. I hope people don't hear it thinking that I take that as a negative. I actually think it as a really good, a good property of doing this, a good thing around it. So it was miracles, and you want to share about, or anything in particular, or?
It's a little bit hokey.
I like hokey,
but again, it's something that means a lot to me. And I'll take up a lot of time explaining it. My sobriety date, 11/23/2017. So I love numbers, man.
I'm a numbers guy.
You know, I do math and stuff for work, and you know, they fascinate me, right? Pi, irrational numbers, and E, and all that, whatever. And I always wanted like a cool sobriety date.
Yep.
You know, there was this guy in, probably still is, he's in San Diego. He'd always announce himself, and sobriety date 5/5/85, and I'm like, damn, that's a cool sobriety date. I always wanted one, you know. So whenever I would, I'd do this all the time, you know, quit smoking or start exercising. You know, I'm going to pick a date, you know, the summer equinox, or you know, the last eclipse, or you know, 7/7/2017 or whatever, right? I'm gonna shoot for that, and something will always happen on that day. You know, my car will catch fire, there'll be a hole in my shoe, whatever. I'm just gonna keep smoking or shoving the cheesecake down my gullet or whatever it is I'm trying to quit. That day will go by and I'll blow it off. When I was done, I didn't get to pick my day. I wanted to blow my brains out. Matter of fact, my actual surprise, the day that I quit drinking is not the day 11/23. I went into the psych ward, and they gave me some kind of antidepressant, like Effexor or something like that, and I reacted badly to it, and I went on a 2-day psychedelic trip that was amazing. Like, I would have paid good money for that back in the day, man. I thought I was a Cheeto at one point. I mean, it was awesome. Awesome. So, once I came down from all that, that's the day that I picked. Once I stopped, I told him, no, don't give me that anymore. So, 11, 23, 17, and 2017 are all prime numbers.
Oh,
Matter of fact, that's the last. There's one more, 1129, but 1123 is also the start of the Fibonacci sequence, right? So, I don't know. You know, I look at it and go, and it's subtle, right?
Nobody would pick either of those say anything about it, because I was sitting here wheeling around in my brain about what the significance was with it. I
love prime numbers, man. I drive down the road and my stereo is always going to be on a prime number. 7, 13, 11. It goes up to like 25, so I stop at 23. I can't hear anything below like 5 anyway, so whatever. But yeah, I don't know why. I'm just always going to...
The volume knob.
Yeah, it's silly, but again, it's one of those meaningful, weighty things for me that helps keep me sober.
Yeah, man. So, yeah. I like that story.
It's silly, but whatever.
That's not, and I think it's actually honoring something too, because I've picked sobriety dates for guys before, helped them. Yeah. They don't know when they stopped, but we knew what day they had actually. By this date they knew they were clean, so we just said let's just go with that.
I had to track.
It don't really matter.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, well, Wednesday I know that I took my son to Scouts, but I couldn't pick up my son. My wife had to go get, so then they do this little mental track down, and it's like, okay, well, so then like Sunday's a safe date,
Yeah.
let's do that, okay?
Yeah.
And do it. We got somebody in the group that really didn't pay attention to Alex when he told his story. His sobriety date is a made-up date. He knows he was sober. It was, that's one he picked. But it wasn't the significant thing it is to us. Like whenever I stopped, right? When I know when my day was, but to him it wasn't like a stop drinking date. It just happened to be the day he stopped.
Right.
So it's interesting, but still, it doesn't really. Again, it's kind of funny. It doesn't really matter. Pick a date, man. Pick one and stick with it. Because it's a fun thing when you go around and I do this, and I like to pick Chase out because he's also a good sport, and him and I met a long time ago in a rehab joint, and we'd see each other now and again, and then I actually had the miracle happen, and I got well, right? And there is some intuition. There's something that's come to me that I didn't have beforehand, and I'll have something. I'll see some things into the future, kind of stuff. I'll have some true no shit intuition that will lead me in a direction that pans out to be true, and I follow it and it works. But same thing goes when I see somebody and Chase is pretending to be sober. Well, I pretend to be sober too, so I know what that looks like. So I like to poke on people because I'm relatively forward, and I'm pretty straight shooter today most of the time. Although sometimes my straight shot's a curveball. So I go, oh yeah, man, what's your sobriety date? And you just hit them cold, and they don't know what that stammer and stutter and shit while they come up with one. And then like, what's your sponsor's name? And he's down at the token. Man, I forgot. Hold on. It's like, you don't really. Yeah. If you got a real sponsor, you ain't forgetting his name. Or what step you on?
There you go.
Yeah. So I did that, but I did that all to Chase over time, and he gave me those dancing lessons. But you know what? I didn't. I just swallowed him. It wasn't to call him out or make fun of him, and I didn't do it in front of somebody else. It wasn't that I was doing that. I was doing it on a one-on-one over to the side to gauge where he was at and what was going on with him, and I never, I didn't hold any of that. I just accepted it with love and carried on. Gave him my telephone number, that kind of stuff, and continued walking, and later on down the road that paid off because I wasn't an asshole to him, right? When he needed somebody to help him, that guy there was not a dickhead to me. He was, even when I was lying to him. Some of this he don't remember. That's another cool thing about sitting here with a sponsee and y'all had that dynamic a little bit.
Yeah.
That's why I was curious about when we sit here and did this. I know some of the early stuff in Chase's story and Vlad and a couple other people like that, Quentin. I know it a little better than they do because I'm clear.
Right.
And I was there, present, and clear-headed. They were not. So I listened, and it's kind of like, yeah, okay, we'll just go with that. You know, not quite exactly, but we will just go with that.
Close enough.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's not an error. You know,
Right.
no real harm in it. So that is a cool. So miracles can be what you want them to be.
Yeah, I think so. That's kind of what I was hedging at there.
Yeah. I like to do that whole definition thing, you know, across the board. I think, you know, joke around. Tom, one of our friends, Tom, will say I hit him with something, and he'll share about that. And it's another one of these things that was just out of the blue. He come up and walking into a meeting like, you know, another one of these pretending to be sober kind of thing, pretending to be more sober than he was. And he'd said he'd been around for a while, and you know, and you know, this is not, you know, no, I'm not really new, you know, and all that, which was the truth. You know how we are. We come in, you know, like when he'd been coming to AA for a long time,
Sure.
or some time anyway. And it just hit me that I said, "Yeah, you're a lawyer, right?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you think words mean stuff? Or words important?" Yeah. So like those words in that one chapter, like thoroughly and completely and absolutely and things like that, when we talk about doing this work, those words really don't mean anything, right? Those are not, you know. And then he just caught cold, man, and he looked at me, smiled, and he shook his hand, you know, shook his head, and if I remember right, I think he said, "You fucker." But still remembers that, you know, and it landed on him. So although I do agree that the words are important at one level, this pendulum swing is a really funny thing, because I don't really like labels, but we must have them.
Yes.
And if we don't, we can't. It makes it damn hard to communicate if we're not using terms in which we both. That's why I don't get hung up on the word God anymore. I used to.
Man,
But it's just
you
an
and me
easy
both.
word to say today.
It
And I
is.
know that whenever I'm talking to somebody new in recovery and I use that word, I can see the flinch in them at times.
Yep.
You know, but you know, it's the word I have. And I can go through a whole bunch of other stuff, and sometimes I can, you know, we want to talk about Spirit of the Universe, or read We Agnostics and look at how many times, how many letters, how many words are capitalized in We Agnostics. You ever looked at that? Go home when you get to your book, turn to that chapter, and watch how many times things that are not normally capitalized are capitalized in there. Like Spirit of the Universe, you know, it's all using that capital. You know, when you say God, you should capitalize that. It's all underneath of that. And it's interesting. There's a bunch of them. A bunch.
Oh, it got my hackles up. I would skip the first word of the Serenity Prayer for almost a year.
Yeah.
And then at the end of our meetings when we say the Lord's Prayer, I'd hold hands, but I'd be looking around, seeing who else wasn't saying the prayer with me. Make eye contact. Oh, yeah.
Me and you are in cahoots.
Yep.
The rest of these jack-offs.
But at some point, like you said, I just hijacked that word, and it means what it means to me.
Right.
And let's just agree that it's a term to describe.
Yeah. My favorite thing to say is Coca-Cola or Kleenexes. If I have Kroger brand tissues and I hand them to you and say, "Would you like a Kleenex?" you're not looking at the label and going, "Those are not Kleenexes, Dan." Now. And when we say, you know, around here anyway, I know that ain't everywhere, but around here, at least in my world, Coca-Cola or a Coke, not Coca-Cola, Coke was kind of like a term for a soft drink.
Yes.
You know, and it can be just used generically. You don't necessarily mean you're going to get a Coca-Cola brand drink. If you say, "Hey, man, let's go get a Coke," you know, me and you, we're just going to go get a drink, you know. So the Kleenex, Coca-Cola, Kleenex and Coke thing, it's just the word we grunt to indicate a certain thing.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think everybody out there kind of knows.
Well, people who have gotten these tools and had this spiritual awakening do. People that don't. That's so back full circle around. And when I say miracle, I'm just meaning some profound and completely indescribable thing that happened to me.
Yep.
That is a blessing in my life. Some of mine are. I mean, the paperwork changing down at the courthouse and putting on a different address for me to do my home incarceration at, when that was a specific point of contention.
Yes.
That no, we are not letting you do it here. and it turns around and says, "Oh, they're." I don't know how that happens, man.
Right.
And maybe it was a clerical error, but I don't believe it. And other people who have walked in my life that are miracles in my miracle list and different things, they are to me, and I hold them dearly. Anything else you want to talk about?
Nah, I think I've prattled on long enough, man.
That's a cool thing about this thing is like when people, because every single time, of course, I'm a talker, right? But most people at the podium will feel crunched in time. I mean, now and again, you see somebody who runs out, but anybody that has a real message has trouble cramming it in, and it's like a little speed thing, or they had to, okay, got to hurry this up, and we don't have to hurry it up here. And what usually happens is I look across the thing and people say, like you did just now, that, no, I think I'm done.
Yep.
I think this is it. We know we didn't say every, hell, we could sit here for days and tell stories, but that's not the point. The point is to feel complete in the moment and in the message that we delivered today. And if something like Marshall had talked about earlier, he had left a piece of something out. When we do that prayer in the beginning of this, to let us say what we need to say, so those out there will hear what they need to hear. I have to chalk up the fact that Marshall didn't mention his leg getting hurt and getting hit by a truck. That wasn't necessarily supposed to come out today. We prayed for it, and it didn't get here, and so I will accept that wasn't for today's story. It fell in as a future edition.
You mentioned Alex earlier, and I listened to his podcast a week ago or a couple weeks ago. Really, really enjoyed it. So shout out to Alex.
Yeah, man.
Because I haven't come across somebody that found their way to the rooms the way he did.
Yeah, it's a very unique thing.
But I echo his sentiment regarding meditation. So, the 12 steps, the program absolutely saved my life. Meditation has saved my sanity.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing. So if you got anything to take away, I would say, I know you suck at it. Yeah, we all do. Do it anyway, man.
Yeah.
It does
pay
dividends.
I'd said before that I credit meditation as being like one of the most impactful things outside, next to the 12 steps that actually made a huge change in my life. But the fact of the matter is, it's part of the 12 steps. It's not outside or beside. It's actually part of, but I looked at it as a separate thing because I just couldn't get my head around it. And for whatever reason, I just couldn't, but I had really good teachers coming in. Some, like I said, maybe shared at some point today, that I had people around me that were devout meditators from the get-go. So again, that coming to believe and watching them and go, And I remember having the bell ringer moment on a meditation. I was going to that meditation meeting on Saturday mornings and feeling good when I walked out of there, like a cushion of air out of and we were doing a group meditation, and I was liking the fellowship portion of it. I was loving the meditation portion of it. And I walk out of there like I had air padded soles of my shoes every day. And one day it dinged on me that, dude, you can do this at home too. You can do this. And that actual day, it was in December, and I think it was like a December the 18th, I think. And I made a commitment to begin to meditate on a daily basis myself. I said, okay, Dan, and that was prior to my sobriety date.
Wow.
Prior to my current sobriety date. That was with that period of time where I was pretending to be sober. I was going to court, and I was doing all that stuff and pretending to be sober. And said, hey. And now I'm not as good at it now as I used to be, as far as like my discipline. My discipline was really, really good for a long time. But it's still a big part of my life. Yeah. But I had a really solid daily meditation practice for a long time, and that's not a daily thing anymore. I need to course correct there, actually.
I'm not as religious about it as I once was. But I need to, like you say, course correct. I know my days are better when I inject a little bit, and it doesn't take much.
Yep. And I always said that if I would rather do a little bit than skip it.
Yeah.
I will do 2 minutes of a little bit, even though people go, well, that is not. I'll do 2 minutes rather than skip it if that's all I had time to do. Yeah. And today I'll find myself skipping it. Any concluding thoughts today? anymore,
That was
including
it.
Scott.
Yeah,
Alex's podcast was great, and definitely I talked to him this morning for a little while. He called me this morning, and Alex is a hell of a dude. He went to 2 funerals yesterday. One of them for our friend that's in the program that passed away, her brother, and then his guy he shared about the other night. He had an influential person in his life that passed away too. Two funerals in one day is a tough cookie to swallow.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you greatly. Appreciate your time here on the podcast, man. And
Thanks for having me.
It's really cool stuff, man. I love what. Above everything else, and getting to hear this, what I get to do that touches me more than anything is I get to actually connect deeper to my friends across this table.
Absolutely.
I know more about you now than I knew when you walked in, and that's what one of the things we do is let each other, that true definition of intimacy is me being me and me letting you see me, and we do that here, I like that. So we will close another episode down. The little tail end commercials of spiritualunderground.org. Hey, sometimes I don't say it, but there's a Facebook page at Spiritual Underground. There's a Instagram page. These things are on YouTube. DTM is on Facebook, Instagram, and DTMWW.net. There's a website out there called 12-Step Spiritual Recovery, and I think no matter how you spell it, it'll come out. Whether you use the number or words to write it out, you'll get there. If you have any trouble getting to any of those things, find one of them and contact me, and I will help you find them. 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cone. That book's on Amazon. Music's by Darren Frank. End it like I've been ending it lately a lot. I'm having a blast doing this recovery and nicotine quitting thing with you all. If you're not having fun in your recovery, it's your own damn fault. And thank you all for allowing me to participate in my recovery in this manner today. Peace out.
Greetings, folks. This is the Colonel. You may remember me from episode 126 about nicotine recovery. Well, I'm here with this week's public quit announcement for those of you wishing to add nicotine to your recovery roster. This PQA is brought to you by DTM Woodworking and dedicated to Fury Councilman Kyle J. In the words of one of my dearest quit brothers, when I get a crave, I just go to my room, drop my pants, open the drawer of my nightstand, place my testicles in said drawer, and then slam it. Bammo, no more craving. Kind of extreme, you say? Well, since a craving can last an excruciating 3 to 20 minutes, some extreme measures may actually save you from starting the entire miserable process all over again, meeting another day one. Well, the most important part of dealing with a crave is knowing that it will go away on its own, but distractions tend to accelerate this. Things that help would be calling your quit brothers, or venting in a support group, or even Kyle's god-awful technique mentioned above. What really works best, for me at least, is remembering how absolutely horrific my day one was, and how I simply never want to relive that misery ever again. Bottom line is that cravings are a short-term irritant that tend to wreak havoc with our quits regardless of how many days we have under our belts. The secret is how we decide to cope with them. The veteran quitters are no better than you. They just have found a crave management technique that works for them. So before you go to extremes like poor brother Kyle, accept that a crave is just a red flag which your quit plan should be designed to rectify. Craves don't last any time at all, but a cave will take away all of your hard work and quit days in just a single moment of weakness. Trust me, I know. Well, my friends, this has been your PQA for the week. Take it from Dan and I, it all gets better, and you only need to worry about staying quit today, one day at a time. Quit on and carry on, my friends. Colonel No Cope out.
always tried to do everything they said, only did the things they would approve of. Locked away all your dreams inside your head. Year after year you try to be a good girl. They never failed to point out when you were bad. Stuck to the program like a robot. Became a trophy for mom and dad. But inside you want more. Everything you've been waiting for. Looking for that open door. So every day in your head, and your heart just keeps saying, let go and fly. Let go and fly. Spread your wings to the sky. Let go and fly. Ever since you was a little boy, they told you, suck it up and be a man. It's time to put away your baby toys. Make your mom have a plan.